Hello, booktube people, writerly people, book lovers everywhere. I am here today to talk to you about writing again, and I have really bad news. I did not write anything at all this last week. The reason being that I was distracted. One thing I need to have as a prerequisite of writing is peace of mind. Now, I know there's people that can go out there and be like war correspondents and go out into the worst conditions and write. It's very hard for me to do that. So, for me, just watching the war on TV has been very, very unsettling. Plus, we had riots here in California. And one other thing happened this week that was kind of distracting. It wasn't a bad thing, it was a good thing. My son got married, and I was very excited and happy about that. So I just have not been thinking about the writing that I needed to do this week. Let too many days go by, and I feel the hesitancy. Now, today I made room for writing, but instead of actually writing anything, what I did was I typed up these short flash fiction stories that I have been writing. I've so far, since I started making these 2025 uh, writing videos, I've only done 3 stories. So I've got them typed up here. I wanted to do that because the first draft version, uh, it can be kind of hard to read from, even though it's my own handwriting. So I wanted to make sure I had a good copy of each of them before I tried to read it. Anyhow, so prerequisites for writing, it's not just pencil and paper, it's also psychological. And one thing I think I'm going to have to do in order to get myself to write consistently every day is just make a habit of it. I do not do schedules. I can't schedule writing into my life, but I can make a habit of it. Like in the morning, I have a routine that I go through. It consists of getting up, getting myself ready for the day, taking my pill. Have to take my levothyroxine pill. It's for the thyroid disorder, and then I feed my cats. And after that, I have to wait an hour for my cup of coffee because I just took a levothyroxine pill. So I go ahead and study the Bible. Or sometimes I get distracted from that even and I go watch TV news instead, which I wish I didn't do, but I ideally am going to read the Bible next. And I thought, well, what if I just, after the Bible, get my coffee and then start writing for at least a half hour? Can I schedule myself or make a habit of having a half hour of writing time every morning? I think I'd like to do that. And so that's my goal for this week, to make a writing time as a habit every morning. And so that's the only way I'm ever going to do this. I can't just leave writing for any time of day because it's too easy to get distracted by all those YouTube videos about riots and war and possibility of wars. And yeah, I get very. And then there was the crazy guy in Minnesota. Remember him? That also took up part of my week. But then after a while of that, I just got tired of it because there's only so many times I want to see the face of a person who went crazy and killed somebody. It's not of an interest to me, and I don't think he deserves the attention. At least he doesn't deserve my attention at this point. So, yeah, it was a rough week. It was a rough week. So I want to go ahead and do a game. I told you I was going to show you some more games, and this one has 200 prompts. It's called the Life Story Interview Kit. So, like, if you have an elderly relative and you want to ask that person to do some like on-camera interviews, this is a good source of questions. Now, this is a deck of cards. The deck of cards, there's 3 different types. Okay, let's do the other side. The first third is about early life, questions about childhood and family way back then. And then the middle part is the midlife cards. Um, and then the last section is the later life and reflections cards. So right now, just as a promise to you for next week, I am going to choose 3 questions, one from each of these sections, and I'm going to promise to write something about each of these questions during this coming week, and maybe read you one or more next week, depending. I don't want the videos to get too long, so I'm going to go ahead and pick a early life card now, just totally randomly. Here it is. Come on, get out of there. Okay. Were you well behaved as a child, or were you mischievous? I could write about that. Sure, why not? And then a midlife question. Who is your best friend during your midlife years? Okay, and then a later life and reflection card says, what are your most cherished possessions and why? So, I had 2 of them. Okay, I had 2, so I'll do both of them. The other one says, is there anything that always brings you joy? So now I'm going to promise to write 4 memoir-ish short things this week that I can share with you next week. And I do have a memoir. It is on the computer. Last week I told you about NaNoWriMo, and I started this memoir during NaNoWriMo, and I didn't get past my childhood. And I have taken that and divided it into sections, and I'm making a memoir. It's long. It's nowhere near done, but I can answer these questions and slip that in to my memoir as I go along. Sure, why not? I've read a lot of memoirs. It's one of my favorite genres. And one memoir that I recall very clearly was by Paramahansa Yogananda. I read it right before I became a Christian, and it really irritated me that he kept bringing up the Bible, because I thought I was reading a memoir by somebody who was Hindu of some sort, and then he kept on bringing up the Bible, I guess because he was trying to use the Bible to make people in America think it was okay to listen to him, because after all, he could quote the Bible. But at the time I wasn't a Christian, and it really irritated me. And like within a few weeks I had become a Christian, and then I wasn't reading Paramahansa Yogananda's memoir anymore. I did finish the memoir. It was very interesting. I liked the way he wrote it because he just gave us different stories from some part of his childhood, and then he would move on in the next chapter to another story about a part of his childhood, and it went on like that up through his adult years. So I've learned a lot from reading memoirs. There's a lot of different formats that I've experienced, but that is one of my favorites, and kind of where I'm going with my own memoir. I want to divide it up into stories that are easily read and digested. And instead of trying to cover 20 years in 2 chapters, I want to cover just like 2 stories from my life. So the next thing I'm going to do, I think I've done everything already except read you one of the stories. So far, the 3 flash fictions I have written this last month have not impressed me greatly as great flash fiction, but I'm just grateful to be doing it at all. And I'm just getting started. So here's Choices. That's the name of the story, Choices. And it was written to a prompt. Let me find out the prompt. The prompt that it was written to was, he refuses all fear. And I found that prompt in A Writer's Book of Days. Sam stood at the top of the cliff and looked over. Halfway down on a ledge, he saw the little white car he'd seen drive off the precipice a few minutes earlier. It was upside down. He couldn't see anyone. There was no movement at all except grassy weeds softly buffeted by the wind. What was he to do? He considered a few options. Should he go somewhere and call for first responders? Should he try to stop a car? Someone had to make that call, or should he immediately try to check the car for any signs of life? As he watched, he noticed some movement at the car's rear door. Someone inside was trying to open it. At the same time, he heard the approach of a vehicle and decided to try to stop it. He stood in the roadway, waving both arms, wild-eyed and hopeful, then pointed over toward the cliff to let the driver know the emergency was over there. The driver was a young woman, and she braked because he was blocking her lane of the road. It was either that or run him over. Sam knew she would be afraid of a crazy-looking man in a remote location. He yelled out as soon as he thought she could hear him. "Accident! Car over the cliff." The woman looked pained, but then parked next to Sam's truck and got out, obviously terrified of him. "I just need you to phone for help," Sam told her. She looked over the cliff and then at her cell phone. "No connection," she said. "I'll have to drive back to Milton." She got back in her car and left. Sam considered how best to get to the car. The door had never opened. The car was obviously crushed. Rope. He remembered the rope in his truck and retrieved it. It might help him get over the ledge, but he wondered if it would be easier to find a way to get to the bottom of the cliff and then to climb up from there. He didn't want to do either. He felt the fire of an intense terror grip him, as he knew the dangers of any approach to that car. But he knew someone was alive inside the wreck, and his conscience wouldn't allow him not to act. "Not today, Satan," he said, telling his fear to be gone. "Lord Jesus, surround me and guide me," he continued. "Help me to help them." With that, he tied the rope to his truck. Holding it, he walked backwards off the edge of the cliff. Grasping it, he lowered himself inch by inch to the wreck and opened the car's rear door. From inside, a little girl reached for his arms. The end. 458 words. So that story is pretty much based on what my life is like out here. You know, I live 75 miles from the interstate on a very windy river road with cliffs, complete with cliffs all over the place. And so, of course, there are disasters like that that take place out here. And so this is what was on my mind. Now, when I got that prompt, my first thought was like a vision of a man standing at the top of a cliff. And I wrote the story to explain what he was doing there. So that's it. Impromptu story hour. Hopefully next week I will have better things to report, especially in the area of consistency. This week was hard. I recognize there were some bad things going on in the world. It distracted me. But you know what? There's no harm in saying we can try again. We can do this. We can make it a habit. I hope that you're with me on this. I hope that there's other writers out there listening to this who will actually take this seriously and start writing every day, just a little bit, even if it's only 50 words, right? So thank you for listening. So glad that you do listen to these videos because I am enjoying talking about writing. Thank you so much for coming here and watching my video.